I met Tom at a basketball game. Norwell and Heritage were playing, and he went to Heritage and I went to Norwell, and we were 2 cars pulling out. I saw him in the driver's seat, those big blue eyes and beautiful smile, and I knew I was in love. But, we dated a while, and then we ended up getting married in 79. He just was a great guy to be married to. I always was excited to see him, hated to see him leave. But we had 2 girls, and Jessie and Jenna, and they've grown to be fine young women of the Lord, and they've got each some kids and great husbands.
My relationship with Tom goes way back, a quarter of a century. I met him as a young adult. Our relationship consists mostly of having breakfast and lunch together. We could have bought cars on what we spent for breakfast and lunch over the years. We'd be in a restaurant, and he'd go, that waiter or waitress isn't doing well, and somehow they would tell him their story. As a vocational counselor, I'm going, this guy's really very emotionally intelligent. But down deep inside, there's a part of him that was never good enough. He always had grace. He was gracious with other people. He was forgiving. He was kind. He was gracious. But he didn't seem to be able to live in the room of grace for himself. Sometimes that would trouble me because I'm going, how could such a good man miss that kind of grace, the sustaining grace of God?
Well, Tom's dad raised the boys to be hard workers, and he started them out in trucks and farming, whether they liked it or not, but it was a good thing. We were with his family business at first, and then he decided to break off, or we did, broke off and started our company then, and then he was a one-man show pretty much for a long time, and I mean, he could buy and sell trucks faster than an office of 20 or 30, and his brothers will even tell you that people have just never seen anything like it. He was probably the best in the business, I would say. But the more that he made, the more that he wanted to put towards the kingdom.
Well, the first time I met Tom and Pam Ruble, it was through a business referral. Found out that they both had just a tremendous, deep faith in a personal relationship in Christ. And I used to appreciate that so much about Tom and Pam. And they really wanted to be difference makers.
You know, when I looked at Tom in his business world, he was very successful. And here's the thing about Tom. He tended to believe in people, and sometimes believed in people that really he shouldn't believe in. I don't know if I've met anybody outside of my own family that believes in me like he does. And so in a sense, that was a gift that he gave to people. And some people chose to find that a blessing. Others decided they would take him for a ride on that.
As their financial advisor, I found out through others who worked with him in this industry, he was a legend throughout the country. Tom was someone that when he said it was going to be done, it would get done. And when he said it was going to cost this amount, it would cost that amount. Everyone could take Tom at his word.
He was probably the most honest man in the business with the most integrity. He just was like that in life and in business, and just loved people, loved everybody. Tom got cancer in 2008. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And then he was also fighting a battle with a guy over in Cleveland who we did business with for years that he took us for quite a bit of money. That was rough, but we got through that patch, and found out he had colitis, and the colitis, I had no idea how much that would affect his brain. He struggled with depression a lot, though. He was on different meds through the years, but that really messed his mind up a lot, the colitis.
The colon's called the second brain. Any ability to stay focused, or ability to manage our mood, or ability to have any kind of emotional stability at all is dependent for the most part on our colon. And as his health failed, and he began to look like something from a concentration camp, this handsome man was getting thin and frail looking.
I saw depression coming on Tom as early as 1989. We had been in business for that year, and we had left a family business and pretty much just, we were on our own. And he was successful that first year, very successful. Anyhow, Tom, at the end of the year, he just said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I know everything's going good, but I just can't fight this. I just feel sad. And he ended up getting on some meds, which he did not want to do, but he did, and it helped him. But then he would get to a point where he was like, I just don't want to be on medicine. And so he had gone off of his meds for his depression and anxiety, which I was really worried about him when he did, because I knew when he went off of it, he was going to be a different person again. He would just get like anything. He would get really scared. It wasn't my Tom. You know, as sick as he was physically, he had all this stuff going on in the business at the time. It started, well, this guy we dealt with in Texas, we had a guy that we had been buying and selling trucks to, and as honest as could be, he would call us mom and dad, and he had 2 daughters and his wife, and he would send pictures, you know, and this went on for a couple years. Jessie, our daughter, never trusted him. So anyway, about the 3rd year, then this guy in Texas, he's like, you know, leasing companies are really big here, and you can make a lot of money in leasing companies, and we could get Tom out of the truck sales then, you know, and then the money would just come in. Anyhow, so we started buying trucks, and Jessie would come to me and she'd say, Mom, because she was taking care of the inventory, and she said, Dad's buying a lot of trucks there. You sure you guys want to do that? And I said, yeah, it's going to be a really good deal, Jess, you know, and we're paying the trucks off as the leasing money would come in, and then eventually it'll be all, you know, free money. All of a sudden, around September, I think it was, we got a big letter from an attorney in Texas, and the other partner was suing this Bill that we had all these trucks on his lot. And I mean, he had all these things against him, and Tom was just shaken because our trucks that were sitting on his lot all got sequestered. Our bank had merged with another bank, and the new bank was ruthless. We had a line of credit. They separated everything out, and they said, you have to have this Texas one paid by, I think it was January or something, the end of January. It was like $2 million, and this Bill wasn't sending any money, and he kept promising us the money was coming, it's coming. I've got all these deals, you know. I believed him, and then one night Tom said, I don't think Bill's ever going to send us that money.
This outside relationship, it's really where I saw Tom begin to really struggle more with the anxiety because he couldn't fix that problem.
Then they cut our line of credit where, you know, Tom was trying to make money with the line of credit, buy and sell trucks so we could pay stuff back. And they were like, well, until you get this paid back, we're just gonna put a hold on the line of credit. Well, what were we supposed to do? Tom was just sitting there shaking at the meeting, and he's in tears in his eyes, and he's like, you guys are, you know, you're strapping my hands, but, you know, and it wasn't Tom. I've never seen him like that before other than through this. And those bankers just sat there and just looked at him. Didn't have any remorse whatsoever.
I got involved in dealing with some of the relationships with the bank. It was very frustrating for me with what was taking place. You know, the bank had every legal right to do what they were doing, but they were wrong in how they did it. But it wasn't one thing that pushed him over the edge. It was a combination of several things. But that situation with the financial institutions certainly didn't help.
I remember talking with him and his wife. He says, can I put you on speakerphone? Sure. And the last words I said to him was, you know I love both of you and want God's best for you. I just want him to know that I loved him. And I said, look, tomorrow I'm going to call you about 8:15, 8:20. And he said, no, don't do that. That's a long day for you. And I said, no, I'm going to call you. Wait for my call. Okay. You'll be there when I call.
And I was on a family vacation. And I just had this feeling. I told Deb, take the kids out, the grandkids out. I need to call Tom. And I called him that morning, and I knew he was not in good shape. And he said, why are you calling me? How did you know to call me? And I said, I don't know, except that I just felt like I needed to. And, you know, he assured me. He said, no, I'm not suicidal, Randy. I said, Tom, I don't believe you. You don't sound good. One of the questions he asked me on the phone was, Pam's going to be all right, isn't she? And I said, Tom, you know she's going to be all right, but I don't like you asking that question right now. And even though Tom was having these thoughts of what he wanted to do and taking his life, he still was focused on, I want to make sure Pam and my family's okay.
We got a phone call. That particular day, the attorney, he had said he would release the sequester on the trucks the day before, and then he changed his mind overnight. Well, all Tom could see was we were going to keep continuing paying interest, and there was nothing coming in. Tom, when I went in that office, he just looked like stone. I begged him. I said, please don't do anything, please. I said, it's going to be okay. And he said, no, it's not going to be okay. He said, God's playing a cruel joke on us. I said, no, he's not, Tom. And I said, it's going to be okay, sweetie. I love you. And it was just like he didn't even hear me. And he's like, just, if you could please just have my supper ready around 5, I'll be back. I'm going to go get my hair cut, and I have to do a couple errands. And like, okay. I said, it's okay. We'll talk tonight. It'll be all right.
And that day, he sent me a text that said, I'm tired. I can't go on. I love you and respect you, and you've been a true brother to me.
So a little after 5, I looked down our bedroom window down the road, and there sat his black Avalanche over on our property across the road, and it wasn't running. And I knew something really was bad because it was cold out. And so I hurried and ran and got in my truck, and I went over there really fast and pulled in beside him. And I got to the door then, and the Lord spared me from seeing anything terrible. He had shot himself in the heart twice. And Tom's eyes, his beautiful blue eyes, were open and tears on his face. It hadn't been that long that he had done that. And when I found him, and I know this sounds awful, but I was relieved because he was out of his pain, because his pain was so horrible every day and every night. It was horrible. I called Jeff right away, my brother-in-law, and I said, Jeff, you need to come down here because Tom is gone.
When I drove there, I drive down this road and the police there, and I see my friend laying on the road covered up. And then that was like, this is for real.
When Josh called me and told me about what Tom had done, I was at Epcot Center. All around me are people laughing. And when I think back about that call, I literally don't remember seeing anything. And I felt such a loss because one of my really good friends was no longer going to be here. Kind of embarrassed to say this, but the next thought I had was, what are people going to say about Tom? And all of a sudden I became very concerned about what people were going to say because of the stigma, the perception of suicide.
And I would say this, never judge a man or woman by their lowest moment. Because who of us could stand? Who of us could really be effective in any way if we were judged by our lowest moment? But his lowest moment was a choice in 1 or 2 seconds that changed everything for the entire family.
Let's be honest. It was a bad decision that had implications, but it didn't define who he was. Because the stigma that's placed on those who take their life, it's unfair and it's inaccurate.
People have no idea what it's like to find your husband like that, and then after the fact to hear people say things like, well, he's probably not in heaven, he's probably in hell because of that. Well, that was 1 second of his life, and I know he didn't want to do it. And I know that there's grace, because without grace, where would any of us be? There was, 4-hour wait at his funeral viewing. And the funeral, there were so many people there, I couldn't believe it. So he was so loved and so not a failure. But for the wives out there that are struggling, watching their husbands go through this, make sure that they are on medicine, seeing a counselor, have some accountability.
Don't be afraid to ask. I don't know of anybody who took their life because somebody said, are you afraid you're going to harm yourself? Have you thought of taking your own life? That doesn't really plant the thought. And the truth is, us professional counselors ask all the time. But there's a real power in a friend asking.
For you husbands out there that are thinking about doing this to try to get out of the pain, and I know the pain is great because I watched my husband struggle with it, but don't do it because you leave so much pain behind.
Taking one's life is a decision that isn't reversible. In 2 areas you have to look at. You can't change your decision once you've made it. 2, it's everybody else that suffers for the rest of their life when you do make that decision. So Here's a kind of an insensitive question. Against whom do you want to take your life? Because you're not the only one that pays if you're thinking about that. Everybody else who loves you pays. And that goes on for years and years. I don't know if they really get over it. They get through it. They learn how to use that deep wounded. They become wounded healers.
If you were to ask his daughters if they could choose between having finances in place and in good order and having that peace of mind, or having their father, I know what they'd choose. And if you ever question whether or not your family member, your loved one, would be better off without you, think again. Those that remain are never better off when someone chose to leave.
I'm still struggling without my husband. And you husbands out there, your wives will still be struggling without you, and so will your families. And it's just hard because people don't understand.
Mental health is as much about physicality in a prayer list as all those other things. But you look at the prayer list of a church, it's 20 people who have physical problems. When is the church going to come to the day that somebody says, you know, I've really been struggling with depression. Would people pray for me? Without that having a stigma. That's just as much a part of living this side of heaven as any kind of physical problem.
I think that the church needs to they need to put more of an emphasis on mental illness and help people, because people are afraid to talk about it. It's just like it's an epidemic, and it needs to be addressed. It just needs to be addressed at church, I think. I look towards the future, not like I did before, but thinking, oh, I don't want to grow old without him. But then I think I've got my family, but it's just not the same. But if I can live to help people, that's what I want to do.
I know you can feel helpless, but there's always hope somewhere. And my hope for you is that you'll find that.